host, Kevin Goff, at BRG Brigade Kevin on the Twitter, joined by my good friend and co-host, Aaron Music, at Avalangelist, who has been gracious enough to join us on his birthday. Happy birthday to you, Aaron. How you doing?
Oh, I'm feeling 30.
Feeling 30?
I am 21, 29, going on 30.
Wait till you're 36, going on 40, and then you'll be...
Fellas will fall in line, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's... Birthdays stop being as fun. Just put it that way. But
you have kids with that, so...
Yeah. Yeah, and they're great. But yeah, it's pretty soon. It's like, oh shit, I'm damn close to 40, aren't I? That's not so fun. So, anywho, not to put a downer on your birthday, but happy birthday. We just kind of decided to throw this together a little bit here. We're going to do some draft lead-up podcasts since the Avalanche are prepping for the big day, as is everybody but in the league except for two teams, and even they're prepping, but just not as obviously. And we're going to kind of go back in time a little bit and review some of the draft classes in recent Avalanche history, see how those prospects are doing, how far along they're coming, how things are going, and it'll all eventually lead up to a podcast that should, if we do the timing right, should be right as this year's draft is coming along. So we can not only go through what the current system looks like, but then also kind of have a quick gander at what we might think the Avalanche might be doing going into the 2018 NHL draft going on here. So let's jump into it right now. We're going to start with the 2015 draft class, because if you go before that, pretty much everybody in those classes beforehand aren't really much part of the system anymore, with very few exceptions. The 2014 draft has only Anton Lindholm and Julian Nantel. Obviously, we have Nathan MacKinnon from 13 and Spencer Martin. A few, just there's some more recent guys that were...
Travis Barron there, buddy.
What's that?
You were slating Travis Barron.
Travis Barron was in 2016. We'll get to him.
Wait, which one am I thinking of? Will Butcher.
Yeah, I am sliding Will Butcher because he's not with the Avalanche anymore.
See, this is what happens when you just assume.
So let's jump on in here. 2015, get a review of this draft class. First pick for the Avs is one that's pretty visible for the Avs right now, is Mikko Rantanen. Was the top-rated European skater that draft year, if I recall. Has been a mainstay with the Avs. He is part of the big line for the Avs right now, playing with Nathan MacKinnon and Gabe Landeskog. Obviously, he's got a great shot. Still some aspects of his game that he can grow in, which is great because he's already a very capable offensive player. He's a little awkward on his skates from time to time, but the guy he had 29 goals this year. And this is a guy we're expecting big things from, yes?
Yeah. I mean, he was pretty much a point per game all the way through. So, there's that to think about. Yeah,
he had an excellent season this year. Obviously, he had the 29 goals, 55 assists, was a point per game, 84 points in 81 games this year.
Even if he rode McKinnon's coattails a little bit, that's not a terrible thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting criticism, if you ask me, to have a guy who benefits very very much from a guy who went like superstar on the league this year. Either way, the puck's ending up in the net. Do you care who he's passing to or who's passing to him? I don't particularly care. It might mean one thing if he were going to another team, but Rantanen is obviously a guy who the Avs are planning to have on the roster long term.
Oh, of course. I wouldn't do anything in the world to break up that top line.
Yeah. Rantanen was a little He had a tough time in the playoffs this year. Nonetheless, still had 4 assists. Just looked off.
Yeah, he hit a wall pretty hardcore right around the
really
middle of
hard.
March.
And it seemed a lot of people were just immediately went to, well, he's hurt. But then, of course, he went and played in the World Championships. So that kind of put the kibosh on that argument.
And he did amazing at the World Championships.
Yes, he did. It's kind of one of those what's the deal type of questions that comes up there. Why is it that he... It's not that he's unfamiliar with big stages either, because he had the year Finland won the World Championship, won World Juniors, I should say. I'm sorry, the World Junior Championship. He was the captain of that team. He had a tough start to that tournament, but came on really, really strong at the end. I believe he scored either the game-winning goal in the gold medal game, or was I know it was a late goal in that game. So I don't know. I don't know what it was about this year's playoffs that impacted him so much.
I think it was just the first playoff that he'd done, and he was already pretty gassed. The Avs had a number of players that were gassed at the end of that. Just getting into the playoffs, they expended so much energy trying to get there.
They really did.
That once they were there, you could see for games 1 and 2, they were fine, and then they wore down really quickly thereafter.
Really, I don't know if they wore down too quickly, because they ran Nashville out of the building in Game 3. They had a rough start to Game 4, so you could kind of see it in that one. But they had that huge rally, and by all that's the wrong way to start that sentence. But they certainly had their opportunities to tie that game late. Could have easily tied it, and then won in overtime, because you never know what happens in overtime. Had a huge rally in Game 5 in a game that they had played solid hockey in throughout, and then Game 6 was really the one where they kind of just went and and let it all go.
They put all their energy into Game 5 and didn't have any for Game 6.
Yeah.
At least that's what it looked like to the naked eye.
Yeah, for sure. So to this point in his career, Rantanen has played 165 games for the Avalanche, has 49 goals, 73 assists, 122 points. The guy, obviously, he's a guy that we all are looking to count on big time going forward, and hard to say that the Avs didn't do a great job with that particular pick.
Totally.
So we move to the second round. This, of course, was an interesting year where the Avs ended up with 2 picks in a row in the second round. This was the Ryan O'Reilly year, where the Avalanche traded O'Reilly, got Buffalo's second round pick that season, which was the first pick in the second round. Traded that pick and got a bunch of other picks back, and ended up with the 39th and 40th overall picks. So with the 39th overall selection, the Avs selected A.J. Greer, who at the time was out of Boston University before he jumped back to the Q and played with Rowan Noranda. And yeah, A.J. Greer has been kind of an interesting guy. Obviously, we're hoping to see him make the leap to be a consistent NHLer. I think we're really hoping for that this year. I know a lot of us were hoping for it this past year. Second round guy, you'd really like to see him in the lineup, but obviously there's still room for his game to grow, and I think he's probably going to get his shot, and likely depending on what happens with Blake Como.
Probably he's probably one of those guys who want fighting for the bottom 6 role. Who knows what's going to happen with him, though. The problem with him is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can stay healthy, he can provide a physical force on the bottom lines, and maybe put in a few goals here and there. Yeah,
he has an offensive upside. And he's definitely got that bruising physical game that he likes to play. And it seems that since he's come into the pro game, he's embraced that maybe even a little bit too much. the whole, because he gets into a lot after the whistle.
Yeah, and it's not that he just gets into it. He gets himself hurt, or he gets an extra penalty, or pick another thing.
Yeah. He certainly has some discipline to learn for the game here, especially if he wants to be a regular NHL guy. There's nothing wrong with being an agitator and getting your nose a little bit dirty, but you can't do it at the expense of your team. And that's certainly the thing that he's got to be learning there. But I mean, I remember seeing him at his first prospect camp, and I know a lot of us were always drawn to him in the camp settings because he's been a guy who, from every second he is on the ice, he is going 100%. He doesn't have a lower gear. He skates hard. He works hard. He's gonna just give you everything he has every time he's on the ice.
And I'm really okay with that. If you could put the motor of Gabriel Bourque inside him, he's just about the perfect middle six forward you could ask for.
Yeah. He spent the bulk of his time the last 2 seasons with the San Antonio Rampage. In the 16-17 season, he played 63 games with San Antonio in the AHL. Had 15 goals, 23 assists for 38 points in 63 games. Good showing. It had 78 penalty minutes to go along with it. I mean, that's a darn good first pro year for him. He played 5 games with the Avs that year, had 1 assist. And then this past season had 35 games with San Antonio, 8 goals, 5 assists, had 17 games with the Avs, had 3 assists with that. He's a guy who's going to be he's racking up penalty minutes. I mean, in 2 years in the AHL, has 98 games, already has over 100 penalty minutes.
And you want him to finesse that so that if he's taking penalties, they're good. Kind of like what Zadorov had to go through. They're good penalties.
Right.
And, I mean, Zadorov still gets called for being bigger than the other guys.
He certainly does. Yeah, the big thing, one of the big, I agree completely. You want to make sure that he's taking the right kinds of penalties, which is, it's a funny thing to say, but, generally speaking, teams don't mind aggressive penalties. They don't mind if you go and get a nice strong hit on a guy, and the ref calls you for roughing, and or something along those lines. Or you go in and it just those types of hard, aggressive penalties are the ones that teams can deal with. It's the lazy penalties, the stick penalties, the hooks, the slashes for when you're behind, the holds,
the tripping someone in the offensive zone.
Exactly, all those types of penalties. Those are the ones that drive your team crazy. So we have to also just face it that the NHL is becoming less and less of a fighting league. So it's great that you can fight, but really. You have to kind of put that on the back burner until it's one of those, okay, it's time to do it, and there's really no other way around it. Because that's pretty much what fighting has become now in the NHL. It's one of those moments where you do it because there is no other real alternative to it.
Yeah, someone just punched Samuel Girard in the back of the head, in the side of the head when he was skating.
Exactly. Exactly. No more of these no more of these guys going up to each other and going, "Hey, you want to go? Yep. Okay, let's do it." All right. That's just not happening anymore. And Greer is willing to fight, which is great, but he's got to put a leash on it.
Yeah, it's great to have that dog. You just got to keep a leash on it.
So obviously the jury is still out a bit on Greer as a pick. I still like him as a draft pick. He still has room to grow. He still
relatively young.
Yeah, still a young guy. There's a lot that can still happen with him. Tops out probably and if this is, I mean, everything goes absolutely right, perfect, and he reaches the full potential, NHL 18 style development. probably at most a second line guy. More likely, realistically, he'll be one of those lower bottom six players. You really want him to be on a third line because he does have an offensive abilities. Hopefully he doesn't become a guy that's just kind of a fourth liner.
I want him on the third line with JT Compher and whoever makes it on that other wing.
I would love that. That would be great.
That's a grinding line that also can maybe put up some offensive pressure, maybe points.
Grinding lines that have offensive ability and speed, and that's how you win now. Depth with speed throughout all of the ice. That's how you win.
Right.
So moving forward to our next draft pick with the 40th overall, so immediately after A.J. Greer, the Avalanche selected Nicholas Milosh out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He played with at the time he played with the Baie-Comeau Drakkar, but Milosh got traded around a little bit his last couple years in the queue. He was a guy who turned a lot of heads in his time. He had great size, could skate well, played a physical game, also has a great shot, put up a lot of offensive numbers in the queue. This year, I believe, was his first pro year. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yes, 17-18 is his first pro year. Spent all of it in the minors, obviously. Kind of went back and forth a little bit between the ECHL and the AHL with the Eagles and the Rampage, respectively. After around December, he became kind of much more of a mainstay on the Rampage roster. And it was just kind of one of those, it was sort of the natural consequence of splitting the roster with the Blues, that Rampage roster with the Blues, that they didn't know, obviously, where all the places were, and if he wasn't putting up what they needed early enough, they went and got some of the Blues prospects to do it for him. But when he did get back into the lineup, he made the most of it, put up some decent numbers, and then was sent back down once the Rampage season ended to go to the Eagles to be a part of their Kelly Cup run, which is ongoing. In the AHL, he had 5 goals, 12 assists in 58 games with Rampage this year, has 1 goal in 5 regular season games with the Eagles, and to this point has 1 goal and 4 assists in the Eagles' playoff run. And Milosh, his ceiling is a high one. That I know that lots people in the organization want a lot from him, and he's young, so there's a lot of time for development. But he's one of those guys. He's got that frame, he's got that shot, he's got that two-way ability that everybody you look at him and go, "Oh, please work out."
Yeah, in my mind, he's definitely going to at least crack it as a top 6 NHL defenseman at some point. The Avs are definitely taking the Detroit model with regard to their defensive prospects, allowing them almost too much time rather than too little, so that when they come up, they're fully ready.
Right.
And I like him. He has an outside shot to be on the roster at the start of next year, just to see what they have in him.
A lot would have to go right for him, for sure, but yeah.
He would have to have an amazing camp.
It would be a surprise. There's no doubt about
that.
But
he's also an asset that the Avs might use if they want to trade.
I can see, yeah.
Because he's not Makar or Timmins, but he's the third one below there, right there.
Yep.
And so that might be something enticing to send to a team for either, not for a rental, but for an upgrade at a position of need.
Sure. No, that would be, he'd be one of those types of pieces that you throw in because that is what makes the trade possible. He's basically how Sam Girard was the type of piece that Nashville could throw in because they have that type of depth in their system that made a big deal a reality.
And I don't know. I'd like to see more of him. He impressed me in the first camp. I'd like to see his development over the year. Definitely intrigued me because I felt like he actually took everything in stride and took it as a mission to actually grow. So that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, it's certainly I mean, it was first pro year. You know, it takes time for a lot of those young guys to come in and get things figured out, and it certainly did. He certainly was figuring it out. He became very relied upon in San Antonio this past season, and barring an amazing camp and probably a few injuries in training camp this year, that would have to make that a reality, in my opinion. Milosh is probably going to be in Loveland, so everybody who lives in Denver, sad for me, will get a much better ability to get a look at him with the Eagles, and probably a much more expanded role than he had the past year in San Antonio. I would not be surprised to see him in the top 4, maybe even top pair for the Eagles going forward.
He's definitely going to get the minutes.
It's going to be great for him. Hopefully, I mean, he's one of those guys that you sit there and go, God, Avalanche system, please get this one right.
Yep, you'd like the Avs to start moving from drafting into developing, it's going to be a theme. They've actually done a real nice job of drafting the last little while. They just need to move from drafting into developing.
Absolutely agreed. So Milosh was, early second round pick. Another one that's obviously there's a lot of time before you figure out how he grades out one way or the other. He's got a lot of upside, so hopefully the Avs can come through with that. So moving forward to the third round of the 2015 draft, the Avalanche then selected Jean-Christophe Beaudin of the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Jean-Christophe Beaudin.
Ha patouille. Beaudin was a very interesting selection with the Avs. Not so much because of the year he was taken, but the years he had after. He was third rounder, obviously, but he turned heads. Next 2 seasons, he had 82 points and 80 points, both 30-goal years in the Quebec Major Junior League with a very good Huskies team. 1 year making it to the Memorial Cup final and just losing out in overtime. Beaudin, he's got great size, has a really great has excellent scoring ability, has a really nice slap shot one-timer. Didn't really stick with the Rampage this year. But also played very well in the ECHL. His let's see here. Let me get his numbers in front of me again. They were right there.
He's really creative offensively.
Yes. It's weird because it's not like a flashy creative. He doesn't dangle a lot. But nonetheless he's very creative.
He makes a lot of quick passes. The puck doesn't last on his stick very long.
Yes. 34 games in San Antonio this year, had 7 points, 2 goals, 5 assists. 30 games in the ECHL, 7 goals, 20 assists, 27 points in 30 games, so nearly point per game, and has been excellent for the Eagles in the playoffs here. 10 goals, 8 assists, 18 points in 20 games en route to what is hopefully going to be another Kelly Cup victory for the Eagles.
They need to tie up the series.
Yes, they do.
They're coming home to do it.
Indeed, they do. There's a lot of good stuff that goes there. He's a guy that you want to see. He obviously had a tougher time making things work in the AHL this year. Clearly is doing well in the ECHL. You want to see him take that step forward. He's definitely going to be a Loveland guy next year again. In the AHL, you want to see him take that step forward, become an offensive force for the Avs' primary minor league affiliate there. Let's see. Where I had a lot of notes on him. If he gets things going, this is another one that you look at him and go, oh, God, get this one right, development team. Get this one right, because he's got so many tools. Plus, he's good in all zones. I mean, this is a guy that legitimately, and not even everything has to go perfectly in order for this to happen. You could see him as a second line player on a wing, getting some second power play units times as well, because he has an excellent shot. There's a lot of good stuff that could go with Beaudin.
And I'm ready for all of it. He's one of the guys I'm really interested to see what he does over the summer.
Yeah, how he comes into camp will be a big story. Again, you want to see that progression, you want to see that development. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm really hoping. I mean, it's interesting to. It's going to be an interesting thing to see what the Avalanche do as far as a coaching structure down in the AHL, since the ECHL coaching squad. Do they just bring them right up with the Eagles themselves? I mean, Joe Sakic has some interesting decisions to make as far as that's concerned.
I'd honestly let Jared Bednar pick the staff down there too.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be excellent for him to have a say in that. I completely agree. J.C. Beaudin, third rounder. I mean, if he could crack the lineup, he'd be one of the few third rounders in recent history that the Avs have had do that. I was looking through the list.
What's the last third rounder?
I want to say it's Tyson Barrie.
There you go.
Spencer Martin was a third rounder in 2013, and he's been in a couple games, but far from a mainstay. Other third rounders going back, let's see, 14 was Kyle Wood.
He traded for.
He was in the Mikkel Bodker trade. Then Spencer Martin before that. Then Troy Bork in 2012 was the third rounder. The Avs didn't have a third rounder in 2011. Michael Bourneval was in 2010, and he at least made some NHL rosters. He played, I believe, in Montreal after a little bit of time.
Traded for Ryan O'Byrne.
And then 2009 was Tyson Barrie. So the last one to really be an actual part of an Avalanche roster was Tyson Barrie way back in 2009.
Mike Carmen, TJ Hensick, Dennis Parshin.
Yeah.
This is a graveyard. Eric Lundberg.
A lot of who's?
Danny Boy.
Yeah. That's a great name. Danny Boy.
His parents must really hate him.
Last name Bois. Boy. Boyce.
Kurt Sauer was a third-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty good one. That's back in 2000.
He didn't play a lot with the Avalanche, though. He played the majority of his career in Anaheim, didn't he?
I believe
Kurt Sauer.
I don't know. I just know he had a pretty good NHL career.
Now I'm interested. Let's open that.
Franco Radivojevich. Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
Yeah. Sauer was drafted in 2000. He didn't play with the Avalanche until 03-04 and had 2 previous seasons with Anaheim. He played with Anaheim first, then the Avs for 4 years. Then he was out to the Yotes while they were still the Phoenix Coyotes. But we digress.
Evgeny Lazarev.
Yeah, there's been some.
Billy Niemanen. That's a pretty good name.
That was a good one. Billy Niemanen. How long ago was that?
1987.
There you go.
Mark Parrish, who played 700 games, so that was a pretty good pick.
Right. You have to go really far back, unfortunately.
John Tripp in 95 was the first third overall pick.
For the Avalanche as a franchise, before they were, before the Quebec Nordiques.
I believe the Quebec Nordiques
then
drafted Chris Drury in the third round.
They did indeed. That was an excellent one.
Okay.
So moving on to
third round picks, just for fun.
So moving on to the fourth round in that one at 101st overall in 2015, the Avalanche drafted Andrei Mironov. And we obviously just saw how that one ended. That was an interesting pick at the time.
We were so excited about him.
There was a lot to like. I mean, he was not a great skater, but he was all right. He was playing very well in the KHL. I know
KHL All-Star.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a big hitter that when he came to the Avs, and the story's been pretty well chronicled, the guy basically thought he was gonna get a NHL job, that he didn't really have to work for it. that just seemed to not have his head that really in the right spot with it, and then he just took his ball and went home. And he had that very interesting exit interview on his way back, where he just seemed to be more interested in who the massage therapist for the team was than actually improving his game. I mean, it stinks because there was a lot of positive, and especially potential positive ideas around him. But in the end, the guy didn't have a good attitude, and just kind of was sort of that poster boy of why NHL teams sometimes balk at drafting Russian players.
Well, and he really should have had a conversation with Duncan Siemens about everything he was thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, the Avs have done better with him as far as communicating and working with him and preparing him for what his role was going to be? Probably. I'm sure there was probably a lot that they could have done better. He certainly didn't like the constant up and down, living out of a hotel room, never knowing if he was going to be in Denver one day or back in San Antonio the next. He still didn't seem to have a great grasp on the English language, so that probably impacted his ability to socialize with his teammates. And just, have a social life in general. So, yes, the Avs probably could have done better by him in that respect. But the dude's you're a professional hockey player. And you're coming into the NHL, and he was what, 20? He's 20 something. You got to be willing to work on your game, and he wasn't. So it's probably just, in the end, it's probably best for everybody that he's back in Russia. Granted, it ends up being another fourth round pick that goes down as a big miss, but there it is.
Well, and especially because Jared Bednar runs a total meritocracy, and if you're not going to work, you're not going to play.
Yeah.
And specifically, if you're not going to skate, you're not going to play. And Mironov had very loose definitions of the idea of skating.
Yes. Indeed. Other fourth-round picks, the Avs have not had another great... Again, the Avs have had not a great history outside of the first couple of rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Last 2014, there was 2 fourth-round picks with Nick Magyar and Alexis Pepin, both of whom were never signed.
Oh, so hot.
Mason Gertson was looking pretty good. He's still in the system, but again, spending a lot of time in the minors. Just hasn't really taken the steps forward that you would hope to see him be crack the NHL lineup. Joachim Nurmark in 2011. Stefan Silas. Sammy Adekalio was a fourth-round pick in 2010. Again, there was a decent amount of fanfare surrounding Sammy before he ended up going back to Europe. I think he's playing in the Czech League now.
I believe so, but the Avs still own his rights, so
I mean, hey, hope springs eternal, right? But
Sammy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last fourth rounder as you go back here that made any type of a. Well, there you go, Brad Malone, 2007, played with the Avs for a little bit.
And the most famous fourth-round draft pick is from the Quebec years with Milan Hajduk.
Yep, there you go.
So top that one.
Again, and a lot of really names you just sit there and go, who is this? David Svigrovsky, Mikko Kalteva, Tom Gilbert had an NHL career, so there's that.
So he's got that going for him.
Yeah, there you go. Colt King, who? Again, you're getting outside those first couple rounds.
From rounds 4 on, it's kind of they're so hit and miss. Like, you go fourth round picks, there aren't a whole lot who've made it in.
Very true, and that's true of a lot of teams. But again, the fact that you're not really seeing much from any of them. It's again very much an indictment on the Avs' development ability to develop their players, and
Fair enough, but the number of years that the Avs used a fourth-round pick on a European player that they ultimately couldn't get to come over, that really skews that.
Yeah, that's fair. There you go. Let's see. Go ahead.
That's you have to be worried about skewed data there, just because of where they were drafting. They've changed it recently, but now it seems like every year, fourth round, we've got this guy from Europe. Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, last couple years, certainly that's been true. Last year they had 2 picks, and we'll get to these guys, but Nick Henry was a fourth-round guy, and then Peter Kavacha.
Right.
So, and again, we'll get to him.
See?
So, yeah, you're not wrong.
LeVar Burke tapping his head, .gif.
So 2015, the Avs did not have a 5th-round pick. So we jumped to round 6, where they selected Sergei Boykov. That was their 3rd player out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League that year. He was drafted at the time out of the Drummondville Voltigeurs. He was another guy that got traded around a little bit. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of fanfare surrounding him. His numbers have always been pretty not bad. Didn't really have anything.
Serviceable AHL defenseman.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the unfortunate, he's lost a year of his development this particular year because he was shelved in the preseason with a dirty hit that cost him the whole year. Just one of those things that you sit there and go, oh, you got to do that in preseason. Give me a break. First year in San Antonio again was pretty okay. 16 points in 63 games. You know, nothing you're going to go. Nothing that's going to amaze you, but okay.
His skating and deep play away from the puck is really what makes him really, really good.
Exactly. His skating has always been the thing that has been the most noticeable positive from him. And if you came to see any of his development camp stuff, whenever they had the power skating things, it was always the Sergei Boykov show. Excellent edges, starts and stops were very seamless. It was always just, could he make enough progression to make it to the pro game? Was his decision-making good enough and fast enough? And obviously, he gets set back this season because of that injury. And, hopefully he'll be able to come back into camp this year and make the most of it and get back in with the Eagles as a serviceable guy.
Yeah. What a nice key it'd be.
I mean, top ceiling with him, you're kind of hoping that if everything works out, he's going to be basically a bottom pair type guy that might get a few penalty kill minutes. Yeah,
guy who might get. I thought you were going to say guy who might get a few penalty minutes. I'm like, that's really the best case scenario. It's not exactly Tom Wilson.
No, not exactly. But yeah, guy. I mean, he's always been a pretty decent defenseman. Has had a decent showing on international scales as well. In World Junior Championships with the Russian team, he was part of a couple silver medal teams. I want to say, at least one that I can think of. So hopefully, yeah, you just kind of hope that he comes back healthy and that he can make the most of what he's got down in the AHL. Because I mean, really, you look at it, he's not near the top of the Avs.
But, if you can get a 6th-round pick to play AHL minutes for you for a while, that's a pretty good draft pick.
It's not too bad. It certainly is not too bad.
It's better than the next guy, Gustav Olhaver.
Gustav Olhaver was the Avs' 7th-round pick that year at 191st overall, and he was that. I mean, talk about that. That was very much just a swing. You're just swinging for that one at that point.
Well, the interesting thing that came along with that is he was also selected just shortly thereafter in the import draft.
He was
for a WHL team, I believe Seattle.
Yes, he went. He was going to the
Steve Konowalchuk.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tried him. They tried him at center. They've tried him at defense. I'm sure he's 6'7", 220, so they might try him at goaltender too.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right. Yeah,
but he's a Hail Mary pass. Mm-hmm. You hope you connect on one of every 7 of those, maybe.
Yeah, 7th round picks. If they ever really sign an entry level contract, then good. They're very much hit and misses.
I'd almost rather have an undrafted free agent either out of college or the Canadian juniors than I would a 7th-round draft pick.
Yeah. It's hard to. It's always hard to know where those guys are going to go. He certainly did not. He never really fit with Seattle. They traded him to Swift Current, I believe, and
yes, correct.
He didn't pan out there either. And after that one season, he was back in Sweden.
Yep.
And I believe I was looking at his numbers earlier. I think he's now in the Swedish minor leagues as well. Yes. So he is he's a guy that is having he's doing his best to make a living playing pro hockey somewhere, but he's not a guy that the Avalanche that's ever really going to do anything for the Avalanche. So that was definitely one of those. Well, that guy's big. If he figures his stuff out, he might be able to crack a lineup somewhere, and that'd be awesome to have a guy that big that could figure it out. But obviously, Olhaver did not figure that much of that out for him. So. Unfortunate. All in all, though, that draft has yielded. Let's see. There's. I mean, each of them except for Olhaver. Yes, each of them except for Olhaver signed a contract with the Avalanche.
And I mean, even Olhaver, they got him to come over from. We got him to come over from Sweden.
Yes.
So, I mean. At least it's not guys that they're drafting out of Europe and they only stay in Europe because they're European.
Right. So I mean, just for that aspect alone, that was a productive draft. That got you a lot of players that are now in your system. Mironov aside, of course, that they've got that still have a lot of upside. There's upsides to Greer, Milosh, Bodan. Boykov's upside is a little bit less, but it's. I mean, you could still play good minutes for your AHL franchise for years to come.
Yeah, and the first 4 picks you had 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. That's pretty huge, and they got 3. I feel like they at least got 3 NHL players. Maybe Bodan becomes a 4th. That depends, but. I feel like Greer's going to break into the Avs this year.
He's certainly going to have every opportunity to. There's no doubt.
He's one of the reasons I feel like they don't sign Blake Como.
Uh-huh.
I feel like if they were going to sign Blake Como, they wouldn't have signed Gabriel Bork.
I think Milosh really, from that draft class, he's really the guy to watch this coming season.
Just to see where his trajectory goes.
Yeah, exactly. Because he did take a lot of really positive strides in the AHL this year, and if you hope that he keeps making those strides, and he really is forcing your hand with some of the other players that the guys that the Avs have been signing as for hopefully for NHL playing time. It would be excellent to see a mid-season call-up because he's just playing really great hockey, not because someone got injured.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in the coming weeks. I think he's going to be locked into a battle with Simmons for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, and we'll certainly get to it as we get closer to the draft itself, but I mean, one of the things you can really never have too many of is really good, solid defensive prospects.
Depth and competition.
Depth, competition, and tradable assets.
That's what you're going to get with the Avs every year.
Yep.
You're going to be building depth and competition. That's going to be at the draft. That's going to be with every trade they do. That's going to be signings. That is going to be. They're going to focus. I think that's idea with getting younger and faster, building more of that competition, so that if you don't play well, I'm sorry, you're gone.
Yep.
Andrei Mironov, he didn't play well, and they sent him to the American Hockey League.
Yep.
They sent the clearest sign, and pretty much Bednar held everyone accountable to the same standard.
Yeah. So again, you're looking at a draft class where you had 7 players selected, 6 of them signed contracts, 5 of them are still in your system. I'd say that's a damn good draft.
I'd call it a solid B- with an option to go up to B+, depending on the Greer and Milosh are going to be the ones to really swing this,
Yep.
Mikko Rantanen is an A selection.
Yeah, I mean, God, we talk about guys that still have upside and growth to the game, and we didn't really talk too much about Mikko Rantanen. I mean, just in his second year in the NHL, he's point per game. Second full year, I should say, in the NHL. Point per game, nearly a 30-goal scorer. I mean, there's a lot more that could continue to happen. You think about him playing with Nathan McKinnon for the next 10 years, that should make you feel pretty good.
Yep. He in that draft year, he is currently 4th in points. He is also 4th in games played with 165. The people above him are McDavid, Eichel, and Noah Hanifin.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I didn't realize Hanifin's played like 239 games already.
Yeah, Hanifin came straight into the league that year, if I remember.
Yeah, so did McDavid and Eichel, but
Yep.
I guess they've been injured a bit. Then, let's see, he's also 4th in goals, trailing Eichel, McDavid, and Sebastian Aho of Carolina. Great pick there by Carolina, getting him at 35.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's 4th. I've already said he's 4th in points. That's really dynamic for everything that you'd want for your first-round pick. That is really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, simply because there's still so much upside for pretty much, I'd say all 4 of those top guys. There's a lot that we can still obviously Beaudin still has a lot to figure out. But again, it's his first pro year. He's got a lot to grow, but the skill is there, and if all 4 of those guys have significant upsides that they can still find. So, I mean, on the strength of that, I'll go ahead and give it a solid B. With the potential to and obviously this changes as years go by and as players come and go and all of that jazz. So there's still stuff to figure out, but there's a lot of real good, solid potential for.
I believe this is the first draft that Alan Heppel really did, right?
I think so. I think so.
That disastrous 2014.
Yeah, that
it kind of broomed Rick Bracey and as the beginning and end Patrick Waugh.
Yes, it was indeed.
So, the only hope for 2014, Anton Lindholm,
yep,
maybe Nantel, but also Ladislav Kamenev came out of that draft.
He did, though he was not an Avalanche draft pick.
He was not an Avalanche draft pick, but I feel like that's worth mentioning.
Indeed, yes. Obviously, well, there's a lot of guys that are coming up that we're not really going to touch on too much. Guys like Shane Bowers, obviously Sam Girard, that because the Avs did not select them. But they are certainly going to be. Ty Lewis is another guy who certainly is going to be turning some heads in the AHL this year. Put up 100 points in the WHL. Signed with the Avs as an undrafted free agent. Went through the NHL draft twice.
Competition.
Through the
Always remember that.
Huh?
Depth and competition.
Absolutely.
Always remember that. It will come down to those 2 very specific things.
Indeed. So, got any last words there on that 2015 NHL draft for the Colorado Avalanche?
Narf?
Narf it is. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us there, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got any questions or comments regarding said draft, go ahead and leave them for us on Twitter, on the page on Podbean if you want. Wherever else you can find the podcast on our Facebook page, wherever. If you have questions or comments about any of the other draft picks that we're going to cover, we're going to get another one here probably next week for the 2016 draft. Let us know what you think. So, thanks for joining me, Aaron, on your birthday. I appreciate it. Hope we didn't keep you too long from too much good stuff going on out there.
Oh no, I already had all the fun that I could stand today.
All the fun you could stand, and then a podcast. Excellent.
Mm-hmm. See, I needed to balance everything out.
Oh, man.
You tune in next week as we find out who's replacing Aaron on the.
That's right. So
Louis,
we'll be taking applications for taking applications for their next co-host. Right on. Well, we're going to call it a podcast. So have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you in about a week about some more draft stuff. Have a good one. We'll see you then.